the time, so I'll be trying to be a bit faster than I intended. Allow me perhaps to say thank you again to Uncle Alan Madden for his welcome to the country, and I also extend my acknowledgement and pay my respects to traditional owners, past and present. Welcome to everyone here, and could I say it's great to be at this conference. Thank you for the invitation to Dr. Tanya's team and Russell Anderson. It's not my first conference. I've spoken some earlier conferences. There's plenty of friends of mine with whom I went a long time back. I see here Irene Stefani here from HCP, with whom I worked about 30 years ago. I saw earlier George Tanya. It's really good that you keep that great work going. It's really good to be among so many friends of Australian multicultural. Maybe a few words about the council. Minister mentioned it. Allow me to say we are a small, non-statutory, ministerially appointed body, and we advise government on the ways to sustain and support Australian multicultural. We are not an advocacy body. We consist of 6 members only, and what we have in common with you that we really and the committee's broadcasting clearly helps to ensure that all Australians do have a voice in our national conversation, and this session is very much about it. Allow me to mention few facts which relate to the latest Cameron survey, which was only released last week. First, there's a very high level of agreement with the proposition that multiculturalism has been good for Australia. Some 86% of Australians, 86, or almost everyone, support that proposal, and it was quite stable in the surveys over the last few years. Also, what is important is that the survey indicates that majority opinion doesn't support policy of assimilation, nor does it support government funding for cultural maintenance. Only 37% agrees with government's assistance to ethnic minorities to maintain the customs and traditions. And for majority of Australians, multiculturalism involves kind of social compact, kind of a two-way process, which involves both adaptation by Australian-born people and by immigrants. 66% agree with the notions that we should do more to learn about the customs and heritage of different ethnic and cultural groups of this country. And 60% of us believe that people who come to Australia should change their behavior to be more like Australians. In a way, what also is important, that this year's survey showed the lowest ever level of concern with issues of immigration. Only about 34% of Australians think that our current levels of immigration are too high. Now, we know that about 45% of us have either been born overseas or have at least one parent who's been overseas. So we can call half of us do have that multicultural connection. We are really core of the nation. To languages, allow me to say that language is intrinsic to expression of culture. It has very important social culture, and maintenance of languages is very important. You simply can't function in Australian society if you are not aware of your roots. You are bringing with you your history, or family tradition, your cultural phrases. You need to pass them to your children so they could be proud Australians. And community radio plays an enormous role in this area, and your importance is especially significant because of your community base. You talk to your communities, you inform your communities, you entertain your communities. It's much more than any other broadcaster does in Australia. US multicultural broadcasters are part of Australian identity, and this session very much will deal with Australian identity. So if I could invite our panelists here to join me on the stage now, please. And each of the panelists will have about 10 minutes to talk. Joe, you are most welcome. You are first who will speak. 10 minutes to speak. We'll try to have at the end about 15 minutes for a question time. In order to save time, I'm not proposing to read full bio notes of each speaker. Remember, if you look at the program, there's a very detailed bio notes for each speaker. I will introduce them very briefly. And first one is Joe Caputo, OAM, who is chairperson of FECCA. Earlier, Joe was chair of Ethnic Communities Councils in Victoria. He also played very significant roles in local government, being mayor of 2 different cities in Victoria. Please welcome Joe. He will be our first speaker.
Thank you, Sandra. Good morning, everyone. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we meet in this weekend, the Gadigal people. And I do so as a deep understanding that Australia was a multicultural, multilingual nation long before white settlement. I acknowledge Australia's first people also as a statement that the rest of us came to this country from different parts of the world in search of a better life and freedom. We must all accept that until Australia's first people are given proper recognition in Australia's constitution and given rights owing to them, we will not be able to say that this is a just nation. I also like to acknowledge my friend Terrie, President of the National Ethnic Multicultural Broadcasting Council, Russell Anderson, CEO of the NEMBC, and all of you friends. I have 10 minutes to tell you where we started our journey of ethnic identity, and also my own journey in this process. In the past couple of years, the Ethnic Communities Council throughout Australia celebrated their 40th anniversaries. And since all of our councils were established, as was mentioned also by the VIP this morning, during the 70s. And since then, multiculturalism has been part of the Australian narrative. Australia, as you heard and as we all know, is one of the most multicultural societies in the world. Is this reflected in the structure of our society? The answer is, of course, no. Most structures and most institutions in our society, especially the media, do not reflect contemporary Australia. If we did not have SBS in Australia, most visitors to this country would think that this was a monolingual and monocultural country. And it's only through SBS, the establishment of SBS, that in the media we see different faces and different people of different backgrounds. This theme, though, is about identity. So what I will do in the time that it's in the remaining time is to talk a little bit about my own experience and also the organization that I represent. Identity, of course, is a very complex issue. I, more than most people would know how complex identity is. As my wife is in the process of completing a PhD on the identity of second-generation Australians. I was born in Italy, and at the age of 7, I migrated to Brazil before coming to Australia. And the reason being that my dad had left Italy when I was barely 3 years old, and so I did not even know my dad. In the 50s, we did not have smartphones and all the paraphernalia that we have now that we can actually communicate as easily as we do today. So after almost 5 years that my dad was away from the family, my mom, together with my siblings, we joined my dad in Brazil. And when I went to Brazil, I actually went gladly because, I remember as a little boy talking about the need, the fact that we had to go and join my dad. And I did know that it was a very happy event for us to go to Brazil and join my dad. And I had a fairly happy childhood, even though my dad was not present in our life, but we had our maternal grandmother and all of the paternal uncles and aunts. So, and I lived in Brazil from the age of 7 until the late 60s, in my late teenagers, and we lived in a very idyllic circumstance in Brazil. There was in the northeast of Brazil, a city called Salvador, just an island of the city of Salvador, in the northeast of Brazil. And I lived all my adolescent years there. And I loved Brazil, and I spoke Portuguese better than I spoke Italian, because it was Italian. I only attended the beginning of my 3rd grade, whereas in Brazil I did most of my secondary education and of course friends. We left Brazil in the late 60s because in Brazil there was a military junta and the economy had gone belly up. For people like my father and many others, it was no longer sustainable, it was no longer tenable for us to stay in Brazil. So we were thinking of going back to Italy. And we did, because my father had a brother in Melbourne, and he sponsored us to go to Melbourne. We came to Melbourne, and in Melbourne we settled, and we live in Melbourne ever since. I mean, I think that it's one of the best cities in Australia. With all due respect to the Sydney Tigers. But just to sort of give you a picture of arriving in Melbourne, as I was 17 years of age, I went to work in the textile factory. Now, the factory that I don't know if many of you know about it, but I was at a textile factory in Oxford Street, Collingwood. Nowadays, there are no longer factories in that area. They're all now new apartments, and it's all become very, if you like, very expensive place to go and live. But that's where I worked. I worked 12 hours a shift, 12 hours a shift every day, night shift for almost 3 years, until I got involved in workers' rights and all the other activities. And I had the unfortunate experience also of meeting George Zangelis, all of you know. And of course, that was my downhill ever since. But for those first years that I was in Australia, I felt extremely unhappy. I don't think there was a single day when I didn't think of going back to Brazil. Not Italy, but to Brazil. Because I felt much more Brazilian than I felt Italian. Because that's where my friends were. That's where my so the point is that that I'm making is that I felt very unhappy. But what I did was, a few years later, I got involved in broadcasting together with George Zangelis and many others. There was the opening of 3ZZ, which was a national initiative, and there was an access radio, and I had a half-an-hour program every Monday night. And from then on, from that point, I can actually remember that I began to no longer feel like living in Australia. I felt connected because I no longer, at that activity, it was no longer about myself. It was about actually the community. It was about articulating the issues and the problems and the aspiration of the community. And from then on, I felt really part of the Australian society. You know, if I can very briefly, I know that time is running out, and perhaps we'll leave it for question time. Very briefly, I now represent the Federation of Australian Ethnic Communities Councils. But one of the things that really comes across, we have a committee of an executive of 20 persons. And of course, when we talk to various people, there are voices which says 20 people is too much. We should actually reduce that executive. But if we look at very closely, and that is an ideological position that comes from the corporate Australia, which says that it's far better to have a fewer people so you can make easier decisions than to have a very big and complex and challenging group, which is more reflective of the Australian society. But even the 20 executive members that we have, other voices are saying it's not representative enough. So you have this conflict in terms of even organization conflict that we have to come to grips with. 40 years of multicultural experience, it's still work in progress. When Choi and I, 20 odd years ago, was asked about the French Revolution, what did he think of the French Revolution? He says it's still too early to make an assessment. I think similar with multicultural Australia, it's far too early for us to make an assessment about, you know, the proper, how do we actually arrive to a true identity, and how do we see that this is a really successful multicultural Australia. For my part, I feel very comfortable in my own skin to say that I'm an Italian, I'm an Australian of Italian background. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. What a fantastic story of 3 different identities merging together. And in the last sentence, you left Brazilians out of it. So possibly, let's think about it well. Next speaker is Dr. Peter Gale, who is postgraduate program director at School of Communications and International Studies and Languages at the University of South Australia. Peter is a very prolific intellectual and writer who published over 50 publications, and you possibly would remember his bestseller book entitled The Politics of Fear that was published in 2005. Since then, he published 2 other books. Please welcome Dr. Peter Gale.
Thank you very much for the invitation to share with you very briefly this morning. I'll try and keep this very brief. Thanks to Russell and Tanya for the invitation as well. And I too acknowledge the elders past and present. It's an important acknowledgement that we acknowledge the Indigenous people and the Aboriginal people of this land. Well, today, following on from our theme, we're in very special times. Post-Brexit, post-Trump. And it's a challenge for Australia at this time in terms of the identity, in terms of who are we, who am I, and does it give us license in a post-Trump era to say anything we want? And that's one of the challenges for this room in terms of the important gathering we have here. I would like to start with a quote from a recent quote from John Watson, who said, and this was pre-Trump, he said, if Clinton wins, it will be out of love, it will not be out of love, or even hope, but rather out of fear. If I could amend that as a post-Trump election quote, Donald Trump winning the US election was not out of love or hope, but rather fear. I'm going to talk about identity today in terms of much of what I'm delivering here is it comes from over 25 years of research and teaching, and if you want to explore this a little bit further, if you can actually do online courses throughout NEMBC on identity and representation, and I was really honoured that the conference was named after one of the courses that you can do online. Moving on from that, part of what I'm looking at too, in terms of what our identity is. How do we form identity, both as individuals, communities, and as nations? And what I'm going to look at is available discourses. Now, I am introducing terms here in terms of this. Available discourses came from a French historian and philosopher, Chaputo, and it's a body of thought. But sometimes that body of thought is limited, and the election of Trump is very reflective of a very limited difficulties that we are facing is the limitations of those availability of discourses in terms of the availability of thought that we draw on to make meaning of who we are, not just as individuals, but as a nation. I'm going to use an example coming from the great writer, William Stanner, who in the 1960s sought to challenge that body of thought, to expand it further. He talked about the Great Australian Silence. The Great Australian Silence is that body of thought that was outside of our thinking at the time in the 1960s. And so it's expanding that body of thought. It's in another way, part of the challenge, if we're thinking about that available discourse, is that there's a body of discourse that is over here, and there's another body of discourse that's over here, and sometimes those two bodies of thought don't even intersect. And if I was explicitly developing that further, we can look at the divisions of those that supported Trump and those that didn't support Trump as two very distinct bodies of thought. If we go back to the 1960s, there wasn't a body of thought that even considered Aboriginal history. And so Stanner was introducing that. Many years later, many of you would have seen the film Rabbit Proof Fence. And this was a expanding that body of thought through sorry for the technology there. The image of a child, it transformed Australia. It expanded that available discourse. The image of the child being taken from its mother. It was only a few years after that film that we had the formal apology to the nation. I'm using that as an illustration of how powerful this room is in the sense of expanding that available discourse. Through cultural and multicultural, radio, television, and media more generally, in all its forms, is a way of expanding that body of thought, of making a greater level of discourse available to the community, so that it can challenge the thinking that is around us. The challenge of thinking that I won't go into so much here in this illustration, but we know the limitations of a smaller available discourse, when that available discourse is so limited, and what the challenge is for our identity as a nation. I often get asked, is Australia a racist nation? And we have images such as this. And in a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek, I wrote an article called Patriot Perception Disorder, because it is a disorder in many senses, because much of the racism that we see and the overt racism that we see in Australian society, such as in these images, is because of the limited available discourse, how restricted the thinking is. And so we have a task in Australia on how do we actually expand that thinking. And Tanya and others will go into that in a moment when we're thinking about Indigenous Australia. But at the moment, if we're looking at migrant Australia, and a number of speakers already have talked about that 45% of migrants or appear migrating to Australia, we can expand that to over 60% when we take it to the next generation in terms of grandparents. And so we have a reality of being a migrant nation. But how much do we have as an identity of a migrant nation? And so it comes to that perception. What is our perception? What is that available discourse that we draw on to make sense of our world in terms of our identity? Another moment that was very significant, it goes back to the 1970s, and I do want to draw on this very briefly to look at the Australian experience, because it taps into some of the debate that's been going on over the last couple of weeks in terms of that question, was Fraser wrong? And many of you would have been following that debate. I would have certainly reaffirmed that Fraser was right in opening up Australia to over 80,000 people who arrived predominantly by boat in 1976. And what challenged us was those perceptions, of course, at the time. We have now, if we take this to 2016, we have a perception of another crisis in terms of it's often referred to as a refugee crisis. Put that into a context, in the sense that the crisis and the word crisis can actually create fear. And I want to challenge that in the sense that much of the statistics don't actually back up that fear. Even though we've got over 60 million asylum seekers globally at the moment, there is less than 20 million that are externally displaced. Over 40 million of those are internally displaced people. So we, in 1992, we had 21 million externally displaced. So in that sense, it's not different. What I do want to highlight, though, in that perception is the perception of Australia. And we come back to the Australian identity. Are we a generous nation? In contrast to the million refugees that have gone to Germany, or the 25,000 that have gone to Canada, we certainly aren't. And this illustration here, with the it's even off the chart there in terms of Australian generosity. I just want to jump, before I finish, as another illustration of perception. And just looking at the last column in terms of percentages, if we did include the humanitarian program in Australia from the 1970s, that would be over 50% of our immigration quota was a refugee humanitarian quota in the 1970s when the Vietnamese were included. In the 1980s, we're looking at 24%. The figure I want to jump to is right down in the bottom corner there, and that we've gone into single figures and single-digit figures, that now less than 10% is now 7% of our immigration intake is a humanitarian program. That doesn't reflect, to me, a generous nation and the challenge that we have in terms of our identity. The meaning of image. I want to add this image of another child. We have the child from the stolen generation. Here we have the child from Vietnam, a child that could have been our daughter, a child that could have been our brother or sister. This child changed our available discourse. It broadened our thinking to beyond our scope. This child changed our thinking globally and in Australia in particular. There's another child that has changed and challenged our thinking. The child that was on the beach, another child that could have been our daughter, our son, another child who could have been our brother or sister, our grandchild. That challenged our thinking globally, and that facilitated the 25,000 to Canada and the 1 million into Germany, and opened and embraced that possibility. And then the recent child in the back of an ambulance, often the unnamed child, and the fact of being unnamed opens our thinking that it could be our son, our daughter, our brother or sister, and so challenges our thinking. What I wanted to finish with today is that, what is the available discourse to us? And the challenge for this room in terms of how do you shape that available discourse? And taking on the challenge of what we have seen recently in terms of opening up the available discourse to the broader Australian society. And that's the challenge for this room, is how do you broaden that available discourse, those very special messages that you have in terms of new stories, new faces, new stories that can reach a broader audience. And so the challenge is reaching that broader audience for this group in this room. So thanks for the very brief time.
Well, thank you very much, Peter, for focusing us on the role the media plays in formation of national identity. Our next speaker is Tanya Hosch. We had to change program because Tanya got to catch up a plane. She's a general manager of inclusion and social policy in the Australian Football League. And in a way, she's the first indigenous person which joined executive of the league. Before it, she was joint campaign director of recognized movement for constitutional reform. Please welcome Tanya Hosch.
Oh, the doggy.
Good morning, how are you? I've had a really big week. I've only been with the AFL just 3 months and it's been the last week. So this is my seventh speech for the week. So I'm actually really excited to be talking about something else other than football, actually.
wellness, restorative approaches, packages. You know, as I used to say to some of my clients, when you get a package, they were waiting for an actual package to get delivered to their house, rather than understanding that the package was a variety of services that were tailored to their needs. What funding we're being told will be going, and the services will need to open the doors and use their own methods and means of creating financial income. But more so, we're seeing organisations needing to embrace broadcasting, media and promotion and marketing as a very important foundation of future business. And this is something that did not have a precedence before. And we're seeing many education services trying to tailor their service and their business model to meet the new era and the new age, which is where our media broadcasting plays such an important role for us. So it's a bit like Survivor Australia. Outwit, outplay and outlast if you're going to continue to be funded, if you're going to continue to exist out there. We're adapting new markets, governance and policies that look at identity, that look at our individual clients that come in the door. They're no longer clients anymore, they're customers, they're shopping, and you're trying to provide the best service for them. We're trying to look at excellence in customer service, understanding our target groups and knowing what they listen to and what influences them. How do we get the messages across to our cloud communities? How do we inform them about the reforms and changes? I've been in the industry about 22, 23 years, and I'm still getting my head around it. So it is very difficult to support our communities to get that information out there. Not only do they need information, but they need to understand those concepts and make informed choices about what their needs are. So it's around being visible. It's about embracing partnerships with media, and we're seeing that even more so over the last couple of years with Gale, and even more so in the next few years. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to try and speed it up. I'm going to flip through a couple of these slides, and we're going to talk today about what messages get through to our communities and what media. Already 2 minutes. Okay, so what form of media do is more influential, and what are our communities listening to? And after all the research that we've been doing, for example, I'd like to acknowledge Advanced Diversity Services. In the Arabic-speaking, for the Arabic-speaking community in St. George, when you have a look at what medium or media actually they get their information from, what's a trusted source, the very first one obviously is bilingual speakers, people who speak their language. But the top 3 is actually SBS radio, local community radio, so they got cut off, and then their doctor. They are the ways in which our communities are receiving information and are trusting that information. Yet a lot of money is spent in aged care, developing translated materials and resources that go to sit on the shelf. And if you have a look at the way these women receive information from translated materials, it's at the other end of the spectrum. So we have to look at what method and medium is working well and what is going to make an impact for us in aged care. I'm going to step through some of these. So really today, within aged care and the aged care reform, flipping through very quickly, we need to look at identity, culture, religion, faith, and how our aged care services are going to respond to the needs. They need to have governance and foundation and policies that are responsive and reflective of those. We need to understand that identity, culture, and belonging is such an important part of the aging process. Our communities, as they age, become vulnerable. And as they become vulnerable, making informed choices around your care is even more important, but they aren't able to do that without giving them information in a medium that they will be able to understand. And from my experience over the last year, I'm hearing more and more organisations taking on board media partners and supporters to assist them to get through the significant change. So it's around empowering our communities to make informed choices, and we need to do it together with our media bodies and our partners. And yeah, so that was it. You received an aged care reform update in 10 minutes, so I hope that went well. Thank you very much.
Well, Terrie, thank you very much for reminding me of aging and of returning to my heart to make it fun. I hope you still understand my English. We are late, and blame it politicians on it. They just use too much time. But what I will do now, I will ask our speakers, reminding speakers, to give just a parting message instead of question time. You will have to use your and they will have less than 1 minute, just 2 quick sentences to say what their parting shot. When they are thinking about what to say, allow me to quote the Prime Minister to you. He said last week in Parliament that our achievement in creating a harmonious nation is not an accident. It has been carefully crafted and it must be nurtured. And I think multicultural broadcasters are having this very special role in nurturing it, nurturing national identity, and it's kind of a job which never ends. Job. Now it's your 1 minute time.
Thank you, Seth. Seth rightly commended at the end of my talk, he said you left out Brazil. And rightly so, because I think that that reminder was very important. Until I actually got involved with the community and became part of the community and felt connected with the community, I actually felt like flying back to Brazil, my idyllic time where I spent my adolescent years. But the moment that I got connected with the community and I actually started working and broadcasting at 3ZZ in Melbourne in the mid-70s, that's when I actually felt connected. And now I feel that I'm Australian. And I'm Australian in the sense that I got my grandchildren here. I got 2 grandchilds, two granddaughters. And so I feel that this is my country. This is where I will be leaving my bones. So in that sense, I am an Australian of Italian background. And also the other thing, together with a reminder that Fraser did the right thing. I mean, my daughter-in-law is a child. My daughter-in-law is a child of those both people who came in the 70s, and so I feel sharing now that it's that I have that sort of background. I was born in Italy, living in Australia, working with a host of communities, and that's why I don't feel connected, and that's part of my identity now. I would like to share also quite my views about the different views that people bring to this country about how to run a community, but that's of course that will take hours. So thank you very much.
Thank you. One of the most influential thinkers of our time was Samuel Huntington when he, in 1993, came up with the term of the clash of civilizations. I think what I was trying to present, or I'm presenting this morning, is that he was wrong. That shaped most of the thinking in terms of government foreign policies. It's this the West and the rest, and part of the task that we have together in this room and through broadcasting is to challenge that thinking. That it's not a clash of civilizations, that cultures are very diverse, but they're diverse and together at the same time. And that we can embrace newcomers, that it isn't a crisis in asylum seekers, that we can be refugees and embrace them and make them welcome in Australia. And so as broadcasters and as educators, we have an important way and part to speak back. Speaking back to Huntington, speaking back to our political leaders, and making that message very strong, that it's not a divide between the West and the rest of the world. We are one world together, and a very diverse world, and we can celebrate that diversity and live together and be a generous nation again in Australia.
Thank you, Terrie.
Closing remarks. Identity, belonging are incredibly important for our Asian communities, and through broadcasting and media, they're able to continue to have those connections, particularly for regional areas and those who settle in regional areas where they wait every single week for that 2-hour session to come through so they can hear someone's voice that they recognise and that they have trust in the voice of the information that is being delivered. A voice that, for example, if you are, as we said, dementia is setting in and you are starting to revert back to your own language and a period of time in your life, that voice that comes through that radio becomes even more important. And power and information allows our communities to make informed choices and to present in government and presenting our services as equal participants and those with services equal to everyone else regardless of their language.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your participation, and let's say thank you for this excellent session to Terrie Leoleos, Tanya Hosch, who is away, Peter Gale, and Joe Caputo. Thank you very much. Coffee time.
Yeah.